Hello, my name's Tim Burbage. Welcome to Tim Burbage Reads, and today we're going to talk about the r/fantasy bingo board for 2024. So the r/fantasy subreddit has a bingo board that runs from April the 1st to March 31st. So we're now in October, so we're about halfway there. So let's do a quick check. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa! Let's check on the squares. So I'm going to run across the top and go row by row like this. And this bingo board, each category has a hard mode. And the aim is to get lines and potentially fill the bingo board out. There's a couple of rules. Only one can be a reread, and you can't have the same author for different boxes. So, and there is kind of an underlying thing, which is every book needs to be science fiction, fantasy, horror, speculative fiction. So I'm going to work my way along and say which ones I've done, which ones I've done but maybe they don't fit great, or which ones I've still to do. And there's also, things can move around. That's already in the first 6 months. I've had some ideas, which is in a previous video, which I'm going to put underneath. And I'll see how much things have moved around. So I think those are all the rules. Oh, there's also one more rule, which is if you don't like a box, you can take a challenge from the previous 2 years, I think. I'm not planning to do that. That's kind of a last resort thing. So, without further ado, let's get in. Top left is the first in the series. So this, for me, is Magician by Raymond D. Feist. Hardmode is the first in the series, is more than... I think it's more than a trilogy or something. And I count this because it's the first in the Rift War saga, which is like 30 books. So I think I tick Hardmode for that. The next one along is alliterative title, and the hard mode for this is that it has to be more than 3 words, I think. So for this, I read the Miles Morales graphic novel to my son, so I am ticking that. And I think that's the only comic book one in here, I think. So that's good, because I don't want to have too many comic books, because they're a lot easier to read. But that doesn't hit my hard mode. Does it matter to me? No. Next one along is Under the Surface. So this is where a book takes place under the ground or underwater, and hard mode is over 50% takes place under the surface. And for this, I've done Dungeon Runners, which I read to my son, and yeah, it's all about doing dungeon crawling. So yeah, that 100% works. I think it works for hard mode. Most of the story takes place in the dungeon, and if not, the rest of the world feels underground anyway. Yeah, so next one along is Criminals. The book has to involve criminals as a main character. Hard mode is, I think it has to be a heist. I don't hit hard mode for this, but this I'm going with Winter Soldier Cold Front by Mackenzie Lee. It stars Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. He is an assassin. Assassins are criminals. So that hits that. The next one is Dreams. So the book has to have dreams, and I think hard mode is something along the lines of the dreams are not prophetic. For this, I'm picking at the moment Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, because I read that to my kids, and this Harry has dreams about being a baby and green flashes and things like that. So that's all right for the moment. I think that ticks hard mode, but this is one that can certainly move around. You don't know a book is about dreams unless you're reading it and then they have a dream. So that's the first row, and I've completed the first row. All good. The next row down. First one is entitled Animals. This is a story where there are animals in the title, and I've got, I can't remember what hard mode is on this. I've got 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith. So, yeah, Dalmatians are animals. That is a fact. And there's 101 of them, so that's got to be good for something. The next one is a book about bards. Bards, playwrights, storytellers, and the hard mode is the bard has to be the main character. So for this, at the moment, I originally had Scar Tissue, the autobiography by Anthony Kiedis in here, which I haven't read yet this year, and I'd like to, but that's not speculative fiction. So I'm not quite sure what to put in here. One thing that I could put in is the Magician series has a character, Laurie, who is a bard. So I could take, I think he's in the first book, and then he's in the rest of the books that I've read. So I could take him, that would fit this, and then I need to find something else to fit first in the series. But if anyone else has a good recommendation for a bard book, please put it below. The next one is prologues and epilogues. Has a prologue or an epilogue, and the hard mode, it has to have both. For this, I've currently got Abroad in Japan, because that had a prologue and an epilogue in it. And I think, again, that's not speculative fiction. I'm sure I'll come across one that has either one or both. We'll see. I haven't really kept an eye out for it, but we'll see what happens with my reading. Next one along is self-published or indie. And I think hard mode, it has to be under a certain number of reviews on Goodreads or something. And I read Truth Beyond the Sky by Andrew M. Crusoe. So yeah, big tick. I'm not quite sure what the number is, but I think it's got like 40 reviews or something. So I read that. I got it free on my Kindle ages ago, and I read it. So big tick. The next is romantasy, which is the new hit genre, mixing romance and fantasy. I can't remember what hard mode is for this as well. I can't. But for here, I read Just Stab Me Now by Jill Bearup. Jill Bearup is a YouTuber who does film reviews of fight scenes. She's an actor combatant. And I really enjoyed it. It is a romantasy, but it is different, as in it is a fantasy romance, but I would say it's very different from your Sarah J. Maas, Court of Thorn and Roses, Fourth Wing type book, as in there's no eroticism in it at all, and it's actually a spin on the romance genre, where it's like The Princess Bride meets Stranger Than Fiction, where the author themselves are getting involved in the story, and I really enjoyed reading it. Next thing is, so on that row, I've ticked 4 out of 5, but one of those ticks is not speculative fiction. So I have a couple of gaps there. Bards and prologues and epilogues. The next row is, I move along, is Dark Academia. So I didn't really know, and again, I can't remember what the hard mode is on that. I didn't really know what Dark Academia was as a genre. Is it a genre? Is it a trope? Is it a setting? I don't really understand. I Wikipedia'd it, and one of the books cited there as like one of the earliest versions is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And I had that on my Kindle, so I read that. Having read Dorian Gray, do I know what Dark Academia is? Not really, but I've ticked the box. Next one along is multi-POV. So this, I thought would be quite easy with fantasy, but I haven't got it to it yet. I have got Ship of Magic, which is somewhere, that kind of highlighted for it, but I haven't read Ship of Magic yet. I'm not planning to read it in 2024, so it might be one for early 2025. That's one where I feel like I'll hit it, you know, in reading more fantasy books, I hope. But I think Ship of Magic does have multiple POVs. People have said the Fitz trilogy, the Farseer trilogy, is all about one character, but Live Ship Traders is where it kind of expands. And I have that book in my house. So that's one I've got lined up, but I haven't read it yet. Next one is published in 2024. I remember hard mode for this is it has to be a debut. I want to read The Storm and the Seahawk by Kieran Millward Hargrave. I just really, really, really want to read this book, so it fits there perfectly. Is it a hard mode? No, and I don't care. As you could tell, I don't really read new books very often, so that's definitely one I want to read. The next one along is A Character with a Disability. So the first thing I had ticked in here was The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. Perfect. Oh, and also the hard mode is that it has to be a main character. Well, it's an autobiography of Helen Keller. Like, the most tickiest of box ticking possible, but it's not speculative fiction. It's autobiography. So, but actually, one thing is that I've got another Marvel book by, is it by Mackenzie Lee? Oh, can I not have 2 Mackenzie Lee books? Oh dear, I may have come a cropper here. So I did have, I have got Gamora and Nebula, Sisters in Arms, by Mackenzie Lee. I've just realised I've made a boo-boo. But where it's a Marvel, and Gamora is obviously very disabled. She has prosthetic everything. So that definitely ticks that box. But if I have that, then I can't have Winter Soldier Cold Front for criminals. What can I do? If any of you have character with disability or criminal recommendations, please let me know. And then the last one along is published in the 90s. So I've currently been reading, I'm in the middle of reading Memoirs of a Geisha, and I was like, that was published in the 90s, tick. Is it speculative fiction? No. So I need something here. I could put Harry Potter in here. I want to read the next Wheel of Time book, The Great Hunt. That could go in there. But yeah, so this row, generally not great. I have 1 ticked. I have 1 planned that I owe, or 2 that I own, and I'm planning to read. One of them is also a double for the criminals one, and one I have no solution for, and one I haven't bought yet. So that row is not great. Let's go to the next row down after that tragedy. Let's go. The first one is Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins. Oh mine. So it has to have Orcs, Trolls, or Goblins. I remember hard mode is it needs to be a main character. And this is great because I read Legends of Lattes in March or February, and it wouldn't count. So for this one, I've chosen the Silmarillion because there's orcs all over the place in that, in Morgoth's army and Sauron's army. It's not, they don't play a huge role. It's mainly about elves, but it ticks the box. So I'm going with that. The next one is a space opera. I can't remember what hard mode is for that. It might be to do with like a non-white author or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. I have on my Kindle, I don't know how, it somehow appeared, a book called Heretic, which is like a space combat series where they're all like animal people, and as someone who wrote a book about animal people, I quite want to read that. So, and I think that ticks space opera, because it's in space, there's planets, there's different races. I think that ticks the space opera box, which is good, because I was really struggling with that. Next was author of colour. So this has to be, you know, an author of colour. And I've got, at the moment here, Captain America and Falcon, comic book, which was written by someone whose name I can't remember right now, but by a black author. That is another comic book, so I'm not quite sure what to do there. I have also got, what's it called? Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. And that's like set in an alternative England where Africa was the colonizers, ultimately. I think that counts as speculative fiction, so I might put that in instead. Ooh, was that published in the 90s? Ooh, maybe. I don't know. But I'm always interested, because of my journey in fantasy this year, I've been kind of catching up on fantasy and reading lots of classics. There's not very many authors of colour in there. So the more of that I can read is all good. The next box is survival. So it's a story of survival. Hard mode is it's not a pandemic. And for this, I've got The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. Perfect survival story. There is some illness in there, but it's mainly about everyone goes blind because of these meteors, and then killer plants come and attack everyone. And I describe it as a very British apocalypse. I loved it, book. I love that book. It was brilliant. Yeah. So, and that's a big tick. You know, it ticks all the boxes. I think it ticks hard mode as well. Great. Then the next one is judge a book by its cover. So simply judge a book by its cover. I think hard mode is you don't even read the blurb. So I was thinking, like, I don't really buy that many books. And then, so I was like, I don't know how I'm going to tick this one. But then we were at the library, and my son was like, oh, I think my kids were picking out books. So what happens is I read to my son. So I've got 2 kids. I read to both of them, both kids, and then my daughter goes off with my wife and they read, and then I read to my son. So that's why I talk about reading to him quite a lot. And then he just picked out a book called The Legend of Kevin, the Roly-Poly Flying Pony. And it was so funny, and the art was brilliant on it, that we just grabbed it. And it was a library purchase, non-purchase, a library borrow. And like, it was so good. It was by Philip Reeve and Sarah McIntyre. And then since then, so there's 4 books. We've got all 4 books from the library. And then he went back to the library, my kids, and my son went and got another book written by the same author. He recognised the authors. He recognised the art style. And he's now like old enough. He's 7. He's now old enough to go to like the next section of the library. And pick out those books, and which was super exciting and really good. So definitely ticks the judge a book by its cover. Didn't even read the blurb, didn't read anything about it, just had the front. I didn't even know Kevin's the name of the horse. I thought Kevin was the name of the kid. Yeah, so big tick there. So on that row, out of 5, I've done 4. One of them is another comic book, maybe change that. But the space opera one I've got on my Kindle and I'm looking to read. So we're doing okay there. Now the last row, the bottom row. The first one is set in a small town, and I think hard mode is it's set in a small town in the real world. For this, I'm going to pick Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. My kids picked this up for me from the library, and I read it. I didn't read it to them, I just read it for myself. And I think it ticks set in a small town. You don't really learn where the town is. It's somewhere in Italy, but it screams small town, you know. So I'm going to tick that box. I'm going to tick it. It's fine. The next one is you need to read 5 short stories, and hard mode is you need to read a whole short story collection. So for this, currently, I've got To Build a Fire and Other Stories by Jack London. And because it's a short story collection, perfect. Done. It's not really speculative fiction. Jack London writes contemporary fiction at the time, or historical. It's about exploration in the Yukon or in the tropical islands of Hawaii and Southeast Asia, or like sporting. There was a couple of sport short stories in there about boxing and pugilists and things like that. Not really speculative fiction. So I need to find another one there, and I don't really have an opportunity for that one. So one thing I was thinking was maybe getting like a Ray Bradbury collection, something from the library. He's a known short story writer, so maybe something there. The next one, third along, is Eldritch Creatures, which are kind of unknowable gods or strange things that are outside of our comprehension. And hard mode is it's not to do with the Cthulhu mythos of H.P. Lovecraft. For this one, I read The Long Earth by Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter, and it's about parallel Earths, so it's definitely speculative fiction. It's kind of sci-fi. It is sci-fi. And they jump all these parallel worlds, and eventually they reach this spot where they find this, I imagine it as like a great giant amoeba thing that just absorbs life, and it's called first person single person perspective or something like that. It's got a very strange name, and it communicates in a very weird way, and they don't know where it came from or what it is. I think that ticks Eldritch Creatures. I think it may not be spooky cosmic horror, but it is a threat that is expanding and unknowable and potentially unstoppable. So I think it ticks that box. The next one is reference materials. So these are books that have reference materials, maps, location guides, footnotes, character guides, things like that. And originally I had the Silmarillion because I had them up the wazoo, but I put that in the Orcs, Trolls and Goblins section. And right now I'm listening to... Oh, and hard mode is... it's got more than 2 or more of those. I'm listening to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which... by Susanna Clarke, which is I'm really enjoying. I'm over halfway through now, and I wanted to get going, you know. But anyway, it's full of footnotes, full of them. So I don't think it has any other reference materials, but it certainly has footnotes, so it's a tick. And then the final one, the fifth line, the fifth column on the fifth row is a book club or read-along. Now, this is to do with their r/fantasy subreddit. You need to find a book that's currently in their read-along, or they've done a read-along in the past. I think Hardmode is one of their current ones. Now, there's like different book clubs on there, but there was a big spreadsheet, and I looked on them, and most of the books I'd never heard of, or I'd already read, or I had no intention to read. But there's one on there which is Titus Grown by Mervyn Peake, the first book in the Gormenghast series. It's a classic fantasy. I probably could get it from the library. That's what I'm interested in at the moment. So in the bottom row, I've technically done 4 out of 5, but one of them isn't speculative, so I need to find another solution for that. So where are we at? Halfway through. So there's 25 boxes that I need to complete. So if I'm halfway through, I should be on about 12, 13. That's like a good place to be. And currently, I'm on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I'm ahead. 2 of those ticks are non-speculative fiction, so need to be changed, possibly. None of this is the need. This is just for fun. But let's say I'm going to change those. So 16. So I'm 16 out of 25. So I am on track, and I have solutions for, or I have things planned for 1, 2, 3, 4 more, and then I might need to move a few things around. I'm planning to read, so that, like, there's a few boxes where, like, you can move a few things. So, for example, that first in the series, I want to start reading Ship of Magic. Not Ship of Magic. Would like to read that. That would tick that. But A Tale of Magic by Chris Colfer, or The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan. Those 2 could go in there, and that could free up Magician to then put into Bards, potentially. Or in multi-POV, because Magician also takes multi-POV. So there's a few... A Darkness at Sethanon, I think, has got orcs and trolls and goblins, so maybe I can move that in and then move stuff around. So I've got a few things that are movable, but yeah, I'm on track ultimately. So let me know how you're doing below in the comments, or if I'm really looking for recommendations on bards, short stories published in the 90s, criminals, author of colour. I think those are the ones. I think those are the ones where I need a little bit of help finding some. But yeah, there we go. Please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps. I don't know if it helps the algorithm or anything, but it makes me feel better, to be honest. Yeah, and I'll see you in the next one. Now, get out of my house!